Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
Hey, it's day 2 of our environment unit. Day 1, we spent talking about a city in New Zealand, which is down under, along with Australia. They're both considered to be down under. They're beautiful areas. New Zealand in particular is a place I'd like to go just because of the movies I've seen. And the scenery is just spectacular. It's so green and beautiful. So one of these days, if I ever get a chance, I'd like to go to New Zealand. We're talking about Auckland, New Zealand, because they've done something really creative, really innovative, and created a way to handle a lot of heavy rains and flash floods that helps protect the city. And also, they've turned this innovative idea into some beautiful scenic parks as well, which I love.
Absolutely. And, of course, this could apply to Taiwan as well because Taiwan gets a lot of rain from weather systems and typhoons and things like that. And, of course, flooding is a big problem. So maybe we could learn a thing or two about how New Zealand does this. So let's dive right in, everybody. Let's listen to the entire contents of our lesson right now.
To assess a city's sponginess or its capacity to absorb excess rainfall, researchers use sophisticated technologies like geographical information systems, satellite imagery, and machine learning. These map surfaces by color: gray for concrete and buildings, green for vegetation, and blue for ponds and streams. By merging this data with information about soil types and runoff potential, they can determine a city's ability to handle intense rainfall. Auckland stands out because of its unique blend of low urban density, single-level dwellings, gardens, and distinctive geomorphology, which includes small volcanoes, streams, 2 large harbors, and a volcanic field with rock formations full of minuscule openings. The research revealed that 50% of Auckland's surface is green or blue, and that during heavy rainfall, these spongy surfaces can absorb an impressive 35% of the water, highlighting the city's remarkable capacity to manage intense rainfall events. Despite this fact, several factors threaten Auckland's sponginess in the future. The ongoing urbanization and increasing housing demand may pave the way for an increase in impermeable surfaces, such as buildings, driveways, and parking areas, and potentially lead to the sale of green spaces for residential development. Furthermore, the city's trees, which play a crucial role in sponginess because they absorb and slow down stormwater, are disappearing at an alarming pace. Since 2012, changes in planning laws have deprived almost all trees on private properties of legal protection, resulting in the loss of nearly 1,000 trees per week in Auckland. To preserve its sponginess, Auckland will need to embrace more initiatives like the Te Auanga project. Tackling the trends of rapid urban development and tree loss is imperative, not just for Auckland, but for cities worldwide. By doing so, cities can create inviting environments for people and wildlife alike, and also enhance their resilience to hazards presented by extreme climate conditions. Okay, folks, let's take a look here. When we last talked about the Sponge City, we found out that Auckland outperforms a lot of very major cities around the world with their ability to handle flash floods, and that Singapore, they do better than Singapore. As Tom mentioned, Singapore usually, because it's small too, is usually on top of these things more so than other city-states or countries. Of course, New York City's old. I can tell you they're terrible at handling anything, whether it's flooding or a lot of snow. Shanghai is it's old and new, both. It's got old and new parts. But Shanghai and London still aren't as good as Auckland, New Zealand in handling the floodwaters. So let's see how they do this.
Well, first of all, they need to assess a city's sponginess. Okay, so experts take a look at various factors and they decide whether this place is spongy or not. And that's how they assess the city's sponginess. Or its capacity to absorb excess rainfall. So in order to do this, to assess these things, researchers use sophisticated technologies like geographical information systems, satellite imagery, and machine learning. So they rely on various sources of information to determine whether a city can be a sponge or not. So here they use those sophisticated technologies like geographical information systems. So geographical has to do with geography, which is basically the study of the land and where cities are, where the infrastructure is, etc., etc.
So here in the first sentence, we've got a vocabulary word, excess or excess. It means you've got too much of something. So maybe you have a lot of stress in your life, but do you have an excess amount of stress? Or is it just normal stress? No, it's too much. It's excess. I have excess stress that I need to get rid of. Well, they're trying to get all of this rainfall to become manageable. So right now they're trying to absorb or soak in or soak up excess rainfall. So researchers are using very sophisticated technologies that Tom mentioned. Geographical information just has to do with the land and the earth and where things are located. Geographical information. Satellites, of course, we've got lots of satellites that orbit the earth and pick up a lot of images. So we're calling all of those images imagery. And then we've got machine learning, which just refers to AI.
Okay, and these map surfaces by color. In other words, these technologies will map the surfaces using different colors, and they have a special code. Gray is for concrete and buildings, which makes sense. Green for vegetation, which makes sense. And blue for ponds and streams, which makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, so those colors, you can pretty much figure out what the things are they're depicting. You got gray for concrete and buildings, green for plants and trees, and blue for bodies of water. And by merging this data with information about soil types and runoff potential, they can determine a city's ability to handle intense rainfall. So they combine all this data or this information together, and they also have some information about different soil types. Soil is the dirt, and there are different kinds of soil depending on the minerals that are in the soil. And, of course, other geological factors. And then they consider runoff potential. Runoff just means the water can leave the land pretty quickly and not remain there for a long time and cause trouble.
Yeah, it just reminded me of the soil we have in the desert. We get flash floods because you would think that the desert would just soak in all the water we get from these occasional thunderstorms. But it's not the right kind of soil. So that's why we get the flash floods. The water just doesn't go into the earth. The soil just doesn't allow it. And then there are other places like I'm going to pick England. They are so green that when they get rain, it goes into the ground easily, not in the desert. So you'd be surprised. So runoff is when you've got an excess of water. So they'll often talk about the runoff being too much, too great to handle, and that's the extra water that's not being absorbed. So they can determine a city's ability to handle intense rainfall by looking at all this data. When you merge data, it just means you're putting all your information together and coming up with some sort of conclusion or answer.
And Auckland stands out, or it's special, it's unique, because of its unique or special blend of low urban density, single-level dwellings, gardens, and distinctive geomorphology, which includes small volcanoes, streams, 2 large harbors, and a volcanic field with rock formations full of minuscule openings. Okay, so it's got this blend of different factors here. It has low urban density. In other words, there aren't a lot of people crammed in there like there is in Singapore or Taipei or Hong Kong. It's kind of spread out. It's sparsely populated. It's got single-level dwellings, which are houses that only have have one level. They don't have an upstairs. They probably don't have basements either. They've got gardens or yards, and they've got this distinctive geomorphology. Geo has to do with the land, and morphology just talks about the form of something. And, well, they have these unique features. They've got volcanoes, which is a part of the earth that sticks up and spews lava sometimes. And they've got streams there. They've got 2 large harbors. Remember, it's an isthmus there. And it's also got this volcanic field with these rock formations that are full of minuscule openings. If something's minuscule, it's very, very small. So I guess water could flow into those things.
Sounds like it has a lot of places where the water can disappear into. So the research revealed or showed that 50% of Auckland's surface is green or blue. Wow, that's a lot. So half of the surface is either vegetation or some sort of a water. It could be a pond or a stream where water could go. And that during heavy rainfall, these spongy surfaces can absorb an impressive 35% of the water, highlighting the city's remarkable capacity to manage intense rainfall events. So these are the reasons why Auckland has been awarded the crown of the spongiest city. There are good reasons for it. So yeah, if you're a spongy, oftentimes I'll talk about food texture being spongy. There's something that we have in America called angel food cake. And it's kind of like eating, if you've ever had a Twinkie from America, it's kind of the same texture. It's spongy. If it's spongy, you can push something down and it pops right up again. So that's spongy. And they're saying the surfaces of Auckland are spongy, and it really can absorb quite a bit of water. 35% of the water that comes, it can take care of or handle. And so they're saying the city has a remarkable capacity or ability to manage intense or heavy rainfall events.
Right, and of course, eventually, if it rains every day for several weeks in a row, the ground will get saturated with the water, and then you'll have some problems.
And then we call the earth at that point, it's soggy.
Exactly, so you might not be able to walk around without your feet sinking into the ground or something like that.
Yeah.
And here in Taiwan, of course, you've got the problem of too much rainfall, and the mountains absorb a lot of the water, but then they get too saturated with the water, and then you get landslides.
Ooh.
So when it rains a lot, you should avoid the mountains. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是9月15号 Unit9 Sponge City Auckland's Innovative Climate Solution Day 2。透过前一天的课程，我们了解到 sponginess 这个概念，这意味着在短时间之内，如果发生非常高的降雨量，一座城市到底有没有足够的能力可以应付？而第二天的课程更进一步，让我们了解到可以运用哪些科技评估一座城市的吸水力 sponginess。奥克兰目前的状况很好，不过如果要保持现有优势，也必须要保留可以吸收多余降雨的地表面积。好，那我们就来看看这个文章里面还有哪些学习重点。请看到第一个句子。好，那请同学特别注意到，这里呢就是 sponginess， 它后面有一个 or， 可以说其实就是在说明前面的 sponginess。同学在做阅读测验的时候要特别注意这一种东西常常会出现一个名词，那后面呢其实都会有类似用同位语，或者呢换句话说来改写。那题目里面就会问你这个特定的名词是什么意思，答案呢通常就是在它后面。好，那这里也是一样 sponginess 就是 its capacity， 就是这座城市 its capacity to absorb excess rainfall， 就多余的这些雨量。好，那后面呢请同学看到 researchers use sophisticated technologies。 好，这里用 sophisticated 来修饰科技。那其实高科技我们还可以用哪些字来修饰呢？除了 sophisticated 之外，还包括 advanced、cutting edge， 还有 state of the art。 再说一次 advanced、cutting edge、state of the art 也常常用来形容 高科技。好，再来，请同学看到第3个句子 ，By merging this data with information about soil types and runoff potential。好，请同学特别注意的是 merge 的用法，把什么跟什么结合在一起，我们可以用 merge。好，这句话的意思是说，这些科技在图上对地表标记出颜色，灰色表示混凝土还有建筑物，绿色则表示植批，蓝色表示池塘和溪流。研究人员把这些数据还有土壤类型、径流、前世等资讯结合之后，就是刚刚的 merge， 就可以测定城市应对强降雨的能力了。好，再来我们看到第4个句子的主要动词 Auckland stands out， 那意思就是什么呢？因为奥克兰它其实相较于其他的城市，它非常的突出 stands out， 它有表现得非常好的部分，那是因为后面这些点。再来，我们看到第5个句子，老师要提醒大家不要忘记了，因为这里在讲一座城市它处理这种强降雨的能力嘛。那所以呢，我们要知道雨下得很大的时候，千万记住啊，我们用 heavy 这个形容词 heavy rainfall。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about Sponge City, Auckland's innovative climate solution, how they're handling very intense rainfall events. And when we left you, we were talking about why this city in particular is so spongy or has the ability to soak up so much excess rainfall. Well, you know, half of the city is either vegetation or some sort of water, like a pond or a stream. And they did some calculations, and because Auckland has a very unique blend of things like a low urban density, not a lot of people live in the urban areas, unlike Taipei or Kaohsiung, places here in Taiwan. Most of their buildings are single-level dwellings, which means they don't have a lot of high-rise buildings, no skyscrapers really. Gardens are very popular. I'd love to have my own garden. And it has a very distinctive geomorphology. This word is kind of crazy looking. Don't let it scare you. It just means what the earth looks like on its surface. So it's studying the physical features of the surface of the earth. Because of these things, they've got some small volcano streams, 2 large harbors where ships can come in and dock, and they've got a volcanic field with rock formations full of these minuscule openings. If you've ever been around volcanic rock, you know that there are little like holes in it, like it's dotted with holes. And that's where some of the water can go as well. So it's really a perfect kind of layout for a city to absorb extra water.
They might have such geomorphology here in Taiwan as well because, of course, there are volcanoes here, or at least there are areas that used to be volcanoes or might be volcanoes in the future. But in any case, we did talk about the fact that Auckland is mostly green or blue. It's 50% green or blue. And, of course, these spongy surfaces can absorb a lot of water. So, of course, when it rains there, people don't really need to worry too much. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, despite this fact, or even though this is true, several factors threaten Auckland's sponginess in the future. So right now it's okay, but in the future, this might change. The ongoing urbanization and increasing housing demand may pave the way for an increase in impermeable surfaces, such as buildings, driveways, and parking areas, and potentially lead to the sale of green spaces for residential development. That does not sound very good. We've got this ongoing urbanization, which means the city continues to be built and they keep tearing down trees and neighboring forests and things, or getting rid of farmers' fields, and they build apartment complexes or luxury apartment buildings, haojai. They build them all over the place.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's urbanization. And, of course, we've got the housing demand. Lots of people want to move there to this city. And all these things pave the way for an increase in impermeable surfaces. Our writer here is very clever. The writer has used this phrase to pave the way for something. To pave usually means you put hard things on the ground to make roads and things like that. Concrete, asphalt, rocks or whatever, gravel.
Stones, bricks, yeah.
Exactly. So you pave the ground, and if you pave the way for something, you create the circumstances to let something actually happen.
Yeah, a lot of pioneers will be described as having paved the way for those that follow after them. They were the first person or group to do something or go somewhere, and because they already have made that path available, the people behind them have an easier way following in their footsteps. So somebody paves the way for something, and then those that follow afterward have an easier time. So these things like ongoing urbanization, more people moving into the city, and increasing housing demand, more people wanting new houses or just better houses, paves the way for an increase in impermeable surfaces. Impermeable means you can't get through something. Impermeable. It doesn't allow any sort of water or liquid or fluid to get in or pass through something. If you have a raincoat, you know it's supposed to be impermeable to rain. It's not supposed to let water in, and hopefully keeps you drier if you wear it and you're riding home on your scooter than if you don't wear a raincoat. So, yeah, it has paved the way for an increase in surfaces that don't accept that excess waterfall. If it's concrete, you know that water can't go through concrete. So if it's more housing, more apartment buildings, the water can't go in there either. So, yeah, it's made things harder. They also have buildings, driveways, parking areas. All of these places are impermeable to water, so they're not helping absorb that extra rainfall.
And this could potentially lead to the sale of green spaces for residential development. So they're going to sell these green areas so people can build houses and buildings. Furthermore, or in addition, the city's trees, which play a crucial role, an important role in sponginess, because they absorb and slow down stormwater, they are disappearing at an alarming pace. If something's alarming, it's very scary. And yes, indeed, those trees are being chopped down at a rapid rate, and people are concerned about this.
Yeah, I hate to think that our trees are being chopped down. That's not a good thing. They do play a crucial role. Crucial just means very, very important, something that's essential. It's a crucial role in sponginess because what do? They help absorb and slow down stormwater. Stormwater is a great term. Rainwater makes you think of just, our normal average amount of rain. Storm, there's more water. It's a bigger a rainfall event, you could say. So these things are disappearing. If you talk about something being alarming, it's scaring you, right? So we're talking about the speed at which trees are disappearing. They're disappearing at an alarming rate or pace. Since 2012, changes in planning laws have deprived almost all trees on private properties of legal protection. This is something that is hard for Americans to understand because if you own private property, the government can't come in and tell you you can't have a tree. But in New Zealand, the government has taken over some of the people's freedom, and they can no longer decide whether they want to have their trees on their private property or not. The government can come in and cut them down, and they don't even have to ask. If you're deprived of something, Tom, what does that mean?
You're denied this thing. You aren't allowed to have this thing. Is something that's very important. And so these laws are telling people that they can't have trees on private properties.
It's crazy.
Or at least they can't protect their trees. So I guess the government can say, well, you can grow trees if you want to, or you can chop them down, or else you're going to get in big trouble. And this is resulting in the loss of nearly 1,000 trees per week in Auckland, which is pretty surprising to me because I thought the Kiwis were very environmentally conscious.
Not the current leaders, no.
I guess not. So they're allowing these trees to be chopped down at an alarming rate.
That's bad. Nearly 1,000 trees per week are being chopped down. That's a lot of trees. Well, there's a reason why I wanted to go to New Zealand because it's pretty. If they're chopping all the trees down, forget it. So moving on to the final paragraph, it says, to preserve or keep its sponginess, Auckland will need to embrace or start using or adopting. That's another word you could use for embrace. Adopting more initiatives like the Taonga project, which has been very successful. Tackling the trends of rapid urban development and tree loss is imperative. Imperative means something that's very, very important. Imperative, essential, vital, those are all very similar synonyms. Another synonym that's close is crucial. So imperative just means really, really important that you want to focus on. Why do they need to tackle these trends? Because it's not just important for Auckland, but for cities worldwide. Yeah, hopefully some of the other cities we mentioned that weren't as spongy can adopt some of these ideas. At least this Taonga project, which has been really successful.
Right, and by doing so, by taking the imperative or taking the initiative, rather, with these projects, cities can create inviting environments for people and wildlife alike and also enhance their resilience to hazards presented by extreme climate conditions. And, of course, we've got flooding, whether we've got global warming or not. The rain is always falling someplace, and we need to do something about the flooding. If you're resilient, that means you're able to spring back into your original condition without being damaged, and resilience is the noun form, your ability to resist change and maintain your current form. And yes, we need to be resilient to hazards or have resilience to hazards because that way we can keep living the way we want to. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
好，请接着看到第二段。前一段告诉我们如何利用先进科技判断一座城市吸收多余降雨的能力好或不好，特别说明奥克兰透过这些科技的评估，显现出有相当良好的蓄水力。不过第二段一开头第一个句子就指出，奥克兰在未来还是可能受到相当程度的威胁。第一个句子其实是这个段落的主题句，前面一段说明完奥克兰现有的优势以后，第二段又接着说明奥克兰可能面临的威胁。那有哪些威胁呢？第一个因素我们看到第二个句子，第一个因素就是 an increase in impermeable surfaces， 也就是不透水地表的增加。这为什么会这个样子啊？其实是都市化 urbanization， 还有呢住宅需求增加所造成的。那再来第二个因素呢，我们看到第三个句子，就是奥克兰树木数量快速的减少。所以我们看，其实中间就逗点之后由 which 所引导的这个关系子句呢，我们可以暂时先不要看，就看到第二个因素，就是奥克兰树木数量快速的减少。好了，那我们接着呢说明中间的这个关系子句，中间在逗点之后的关系子句是非限定修饰，也就是这个形容词子句它不是要帮助读者区分到底是哪些树木，而是补充说明树木有什么样的功能，树木扮演了关键的角色，影响一座城市的吸水力，因为树木可以吸收风暴所带来的强降雨，让它们不至于在地表快速窜流酿灾。好，再来我们看到第四个句子，2012年都市法规修订之后，市区私人土地上面这些树木其实已经失去了法律保护，进而呢导致每个礼拜都有将近1000棵树消失。同学请特别注意到 deprive 这个动词。好，这个 deprive 我们后面通常都是加你要从什么对象身上剥夺什么东西。好，那所剥夺的东西在哪里呢？就是 of 之后，所以等于是这些树木呢什么不见啦？它们受到法律的保护不见了。好，再来我们看到第三段的部分。第三段这里的 embrace 这个动词，第一句的 embrace 这个动词，请同学特别注意，这是引申出来的意思。其实我们可以把它解释成实施推动，也就是奥克兰如果要保持良好吸水力，就必须实施像前一天课程内容所提到的河川复原计划。 好，那再来我们看到最后一个句子，第三个句子，这么做的话 cities can create inviting environments， 请同学把 inviting 画起来，用来修饰环境，表示这个环境呢是很吸引人的。好，以上就是我们针对这一篇课文第二天内容所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it for today, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and maybe we've learned a thing or two about sponginess, and maybe we can apply these techniques to our own beloved homeland right here. From all of us at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.